Well, hello. It is good, as always, to see everybody. I want to start today by welcoming our campuses. So for those of you at our Racine campus, our Kenosha campus, or our online campus, we welcome you. And every single week, we welcome our beautiful Weekends on Wednesday campus. And it's true, they got energy. It's because we feed them popcorn every single week. So here's the deal. If you are just joining us, a few weeks ago, we launched a brand new series that we're just calling Relationship Restart. And I said this last week, but I'm going to say it again. All right, so here's the deal. I am incredibly proud of you for showing up to this series. If you are in a great marriage and things are going well for you, it'd be very easy to dismiss a series like this. If you're in a difficult relationship right now, and things aren't going well for you, it'd be easy to say, hey, we're past help, right? We can't even use any help right now, and it'd be easy maybe even to be arrogant and say, oh, we'll fix this on our own. If you're single, it'd be easy to dismiss a series like this and say, well, I'm not in a relationship, and so I'm incredibly proud of you, and especially for those of you who are in a difficult relationship, who you show up week after week by yourself, and your spouse or your partner does not attend with you. I want to just commend you for doing your best to work on you and to do your part in the relationship. And I hope you know this. Regardless of where your relationship is at right now, it's possible to have a healthy and happy relationship. It's possible to have a great marriage. And most of the principles that we talk about in this series, quite honestly, you can apply to any relationship, right? You can apply it to parenting relationship. You can apply it to a relationship with a coworker, to your friends, to maybe acquaintances. But of course, the focus of this series is dating and marriage relationships. And so my hope is if you are in a dating or marriage relationship, and right now things are not going well for you, things are actually pretty difficult, my hope is that this series is going to give you the motivation, and it's going to give you the tools needed to have a restart in your relationship. And I said this last week, and I almost positive I said it the week before. Just because you might need a restart doesn't mean you're a bad person. All right, it doesn't mean you're a failure, and it doesn't mean you married the wrong person. It just means that what you're doing right now isn't working. And that's a very common place for relationships to get, right? Because quite honestly, most of the challenges and most of the struggles that we have in a marriage relationship are not challenges and are not difficulties that we had prior to marriage. Because the truth is, most of the problems and challenges we didn't even have to deal with before. Prior to marriage, life was just about us. I was the center of attention. As long as I could get myself dressed, as long as I could feed myself, hey, I was good to go. That's who I worried about and concerned myself with. But of course, marriage is different. And almost all of us, if we admit, if we were just to be open about it, almost all of us, we enter into a marriage relationship and we're pretty naive of what we're getting into. Which is why it's very easy to make big promises, right? 22 years ago, Rindy and I stood and we faced each other and we exchanged vows. I, David, take you, Rindy, to be my wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse. Yeah, you made the same commitments, right? For richer or for in sickness and in health, till death do us part. Yeah, or until we kill one another. Whatever it ends up being, right? Now, if you think about that, that's a really big promise to be making. And there's absolutely no way that Rindy and I, at that point in our early 20s, but there's no way that Rindy and I would have been able to comprehend the gravity and the weight of the words we were exchanging with each other. And now, in 2018, it's very common for people to write their own vows, which in some cases, they even make bigger promises to each other, right? I promise to check in with you every day and to listen intently to every single word you say, right? I promise to love you for who you are and not for who I hope you will be. I promise that I will never make you responsible for my happiness. And those are all great promises to make, but we make them because, quite honestly, we're a little naive. And even though we know that fairy tales aren't for real, there's a part of us, I think, deep down where we really do kind of hope and wish that that's what our relationship could look like, a fairy tale. But fairy tales aren't for real. I mean, do you ever think about why they never made Cinderella Part 2? Right? Revenge of Cinderella, that's what it would be. Because if you ever stop to consider who Cinderella was and what she had been through, man, she had to have severe emotional issues. right? She grew up, she had a absent father, so there wasn't a role model in that way in her life. Her stepmother was absolutely psychotic, locked her in the attic. I mean, come on, she ended up talking to animals, right? And then she ends up getting married to this self-indulged, narcissistic prince whose life has always been about him. So give it a couple months into her marriage, this is life for Cinderella. Make it a double, guys, right? And we're all guilty of being naive. All of us, if we were just to go back and say, yeah, we put way more emphasis on the promises we made to each other than we did on the preparation of being married, which is why it's easy to get into a relationship and become disillusioned. But I don't want you to lose sight of the fact that you can still have a great marriage. And I promise you, we could literally line up our stage with hundreds of couples from Great Lakes Church who would say, hey, we have a healthy marriage and we have a happy marriage. And those same couples would say, but it wasn't always that way. We went through some very challenging and difficult seasons, maybe seasons of infidelity, maybe seasons of just complete separation and drift from one another. But they would say we persevered, we kept moving forward, and we found ways to make our marriage work, which is why the key verse for this series is this: love never gives up. It never loses faith. It's always hopeful and endures through every circumstance. It's possible for your marriage to work. But for many of us, if that's going to happen, quite honestly, we're going to need to hit the restart button. We're going to need a little reset in our relationship. And so we've been talking about how to do that. In week one, we talked about how the biggest threat to any relationship, a healthy relationship, an unhealthy relationship, the biggest threat is a little word called drift. Over time, if we drift from one another emotionally, if we drift recreationally where we're not having fun together anymore, if we drift intellectually and we never have new conversations, it's always the same old. If we drift physically and there's no more affection in a relationship, if we drift spiritually, we talked about it's the most dangerous place to be because we're going to wake up one day and we're going to say, I don't know if I love you anymore. And I feel disconnected. So in week one, we talked about how do you put down anchors in your relationship. And then in week two, last week, we talked about how to win at conflict without losing at love. How to win at conflict without losing at love. And one of the big ideas that we walked away with was this, that when it comes to conflict, the opponent, the enemy, is never our spouse. The opponent is always the threat. It's always the tension. It's always the problem that we're trying to overcome, or we're trying to fix, or we're trying to manage. And if we would work together as a team and say, hey, let's try to fix the problem or manage the tension, we're going to win. We may not always come out happily ever after with how the problem was fixed, right? There may still be some tensions that need to be managed, but we'll have grown closer together as a couple. And you can always go to our website, greatlakechurch.com, and catch up on the series. So today is week 3. And today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the crazy cycle and how to stop it. The crazy cycle and how to stop it. And so just to help, here we go. I got my friends here. Literally could not find clothing for my man. We're going to call him Adam, all right? And we'll call her Elizabeth, all right? And don't be feeling threatened if you don't look like this couple, all right? Maybe you're like, we're not that gender, or we don't fit into their demographic, or we're not 7 foot tall with perfect abs like the pastor, all right? So I understand that. I totally get that, but these are just an example. And what I want to do is use, what do we name him? Adam. All right, Adam and Elizabeth. I'm going to use them kind of to set us up on how relationships work. There are really 3 types of relationships. The one is face-to-face relationships. Okay, this is when you feel engaged and you're talking and you just feel loved and accepted and valued. Oh, yeah, thank you. We love each other. All right, the other type of relationship, and this is easy to fall into, is when you're shoulder to shoulder. This is when you're focused on doing things as a couple. We're paying the bills, we're working, we're trying to get our kids through school, we're doing things together as a couple. And naturally, we need to do some things shoulder to shoulder, but if this is how we spend our life, that's not a good place to be. We need some face-to-face. And then the third way of doing a relationship is back-to-back. Dun, 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 dun. This is dangerous. All right, this is not what we want to do as a couple. This is when we really start to drift and we really start to go in our different directions. And so the crazy cycle is when we are on a revolving door of frustration in our relationship. All right? It's when we are back to back in our relationship and we're on this revolving door and it just keeps moving over and over and over. Right? If you and your partner feel like the frustration that's going on right now in your relationship is the very same frustration you've experienced over and over and over, that would be the crazy cycle. It's deja vu. The same challenges, the same difficulties, the same communication breakdowns over and over and over again. So the crazy cycle is when your relationship's on a repetitive loop. And if you say, Dave, it's really driving me crazy that this couple keeps moving. That would be the crazy cycle, right? And there are a couple reasons this happens in a relationship. But the primary reason that it happens is because we're very different from one another. And there's all sorts of jokes that we could tell, and there's all sorts of cliches that we could use, and we would all laugh at. But the fact is, you and your partner are very different individuals, right? We see things differently. We communicate differently. And ultimately, we have different needs. Now, there have been lots of books written on this topic. Probably one of my favorites is a book called His Needs, Her Needs by Dr. Willard Harley. And what Dr. Harley writes about in his book, His Needs, Her Needs, is the top 5 needs of every man and the top 5 needs of every woman. And because I know that you are not going to take the time to actually read the book, what I will do is put a summary of the needs on our website. So if you go to greatlakechurch.com and click on current series, all right, just there in the bottom left, we will make sure we have a summary of the book so you can get the big needs of your husband or your wife. But here's what I know. Even though we'll put the needs there, it's not easy to remember the 5 needs, right? None of us are going to keep those 5 needs at the top of our head on a regular basis. And so what we're going to do today is we're just going to boil it down to 1 need for each. What is the top primary need for every woman, and what is the top primary need for every man? And when I say every man, that's an exaggeration. All right, in fact, I want to just set this up by saying this. It is very possible that as a woman, you identify more with the needs of a man. And it's possible that as a man, you identify more with the needs of a woman. You just feel like, that's what I identify. There's nothing wrong with you, right? You're not some goofball. The fact is that just happens sometimes in life. But what we're going to talk about is, generally speaking, from studies that have been done on men and women, generally speaking, here's what we know. The primary need for most women is to feel loved. Period. The primary need for most women is to feel loved. Now, to make sure we're all on the same page, what I want us to do is I want us to define love. All right? And so if you think of a healthy relationship and you think of a relationship that you'd like to model and a relationship that's filled with love, what does love look like? I'm going to have you just shout out answers. And for those of you who are watching online, for those of you at our Racine campus, just know you can think of those words, and there's something called osmosis. I'll be able to understand it. It's a spiritual gift that I have. So just do what you need to do to kind of engage with what we're doing. But here we go. For the crew that's with me today, right now, what are some words that come to your mind when you think of love? Respect. Communication. Honesty. Intimacy. We're in church. They really wanted to say sex. All right, there we go. What are some other words? Commitment. Oh, don't give me words I can't spell. All right. Is it 2 M's and 2 T's? I'm going to be really paranoid about this. All right, what are some other words? Come on. Kindness. Trust. Feelings. What was that? Compassion. All right, give me 2 more here. Appreciation. Not killing each other. That would probably go with kindness. Someone else, 1 more. What was that? Patience. All right, so here we go. if you look at this list of words, and this is how we define love, right? This isn't like I was going ahead of time and handing out the words. Most of these words communicate something other than just a feeling. It communicates action. It communicates a choice, right? It's a choice whether or not we respect someone. Now, you may say, I don't feel respect, but you can show respect. It's a choice to communicate. It's a choice to be honest. Sex, right? It should be a choice. Commitment, it's a choice to be committed. Kindness, choice. Trust would be, I choose to trust you unless it's broken. So in many cases, it's going to be a choice. Feeling, that's a feeling, okay? So we won't use this one. Not bad. It's actually a part that would define love. No, but most of love is a choice, right? Compassion. It's a choice to show compassion. It's a choice to show appreciation. It's a choice to show, to be patient with our significant other. Okay, this is why the big idea for this series is that love is a verb. Love is action. It's a choice. You choose to show love. So guys, whether we're talking about conflict or a conversation we're having or just a simple interaction with our spouse, the primary need for most women is to feel loved. And if a woman feels loved, it's often easy for them to jump off the crazy cycle and say, hey, we don't have to stay in this conflict any longer. We don't have to keep dealing with the same frustration, the same disappointment, the same challenge. This is why all throughout the ancient scriptures, men are commanded to love their wives. Ephesians 5, verse 35, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church. Next verse, husbands, love your wives and never treat them harshly. Well, she's not easy to love. That's why love is a choice. You get to choose to do it. And over and over and over in the ancient scriptures, men are reminded and actually commanded to love their wives. Now, just so we have an idea of what that looks like, what I want to do is give you 4 ways to show her love. And we're going to go through these fairly quickly. Number 1, you want to show her love? Pursue her. Go after her. Let her know, I still want you. Well, I told her I loved her when I got married to her, and I will let her know if anything changes. Nah, wrong answer. Pursuing her means I'm still going after her. I'm trying to engage with her. I'm trying to have face-to-face interaction to let her know I want her. Now, the challenge with this, guys, just innately, we're hunters. So we're going after something, we're trying to capture something or kill something, and once we've captured or killed it, guess what? We're on to the next hunt. Right, I love hunting deer. And after I shoot a deer and after I gut a deer, or more appropriately, ask a friend to gut a deer for me, what do? I start thinking about the next hunt. I start thinking about what's next. I don't say, I'm done. It's over. I'm never hunting again in my life. King Solomon, 3rd king of Israel, writes this. He says, the man who finds a wife finds a treasure and he receives favor from the Lord. Now, almost every guy that I know would agree with this. Like, hey, when I married my wife, man, she is a treasure. But it's hard for us to just kind of settle down. It's hard for us to remember we need to continually value this treasure. We need to appreciate this treasure. We need to recognize this treasure and guard it and remind our wife that she is a treasure to us. Would your wife say that she feels you're pursuing her on a regular basis? How do you pursue? Well, you just compliment her, right? You go out to eat at restaurants she enjoys. You text her in the middle of the day. You come to understand more and more of her needs, and you prioritize her needs. This goes back to week 1 where we talked about the love maps. Anytime you do an act of service for your wife, that's saying, man, I'm pursuing you, I'm going after you. Quality time, showing affection. And the cool thing is every single time we do something intentionally to pursue our spouse, we're fighting that drift that can naturally happen. We're saying, man, I'm not going to drift in this direction. I'm actually getting closer to you and closer to you and closer to you. So number 1, pursue her. Now, here's another example of how to show love. Number 2, show understanding. It's very easy to see life from one perspective, our perspective. So if I don't see it, if I don't feel it, if I'm not experiencing what you're experiencing, it's just hard for me to relate. So guys, this is why it's easy. When our wife opens up and shares a problem with us, what's the first thing we want to do? Fix it. Oh, here's what I would do. Oh, you're having a problem with your coworker and you can't believe how rude she's being to you? Oh, let me tell you what you need to tell her tomorrow. A, B, C, D. I'll tell you what finger you need to show her when you walk in. Here's what you need. Here's what I would do if I were you. Do you realize most of the time, your wife just needs you to show understanding? That's how she feels loved. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry someone would disrespect you in that way. Those of you who have a partner that, for whatever reason, is not working, but you're working, it's hard to show understanding. Especially if your partner stays at home all day and there's kids in the house, right? They're a stay-at-home parent. It's hard to relate to that, and I know, because this is the number one area that I think I failed in my marriage in showing understanding. My wife for years stayed at home with our kids, and I would regularly go home, and it was so frustrating. I'd look around and be like, this place is a mess. This place is a mess. And I did the worst thing I could ever do. My friends, my best friends who did not have kids, I would regularly say to my wife, when we go to their house, it's always clean, but our house is always a mess. And she'd say, Dave, it's because we have toddlers, but I didn't buy it. Good news is years later, they had toddlers and our kids were grown up. So I'd go over to their house and say, your house is a mess. Your house, you got to clean this stuff up. And they would laugh because they knew the difficulty I'd give my wife. But where this really came to a head and what really helped me see it is one day I brought it up to a female coworker. And I said, here you are, you come to work and then you go home and you got to do all these things. I said, what does my wife do all day? That was the last time I brought that up. She quickly put me in my place. And so that was the last time, not only did I bring it up to her, it was the last time I brought it up to my wife. And interestingly, that coworker went on to write a book about marriage and has a marriage podcast and lots of other fun things, all right? 1 Peter chapter 3. Treat your wife with understanding as you live together. Treat her with understanding. Now, this isn't natural, right? If you both work and now you're home at the end of the day and you're feeling energized and you want to do something, but your wife's like, I'm tired. It's hard to relate, right? If you're saying, hey, I'm in the mood for sex, and she's like, man, I'm not. Biologically, we're different. I'm not there right now. It's hard to relate, and this is why we have to work at showing understanding. Let me give you a third way that we can show love, and that is to communicate openly. Again, not natural for most guys. But when we're transparent, when it's obvious that we don't have secrets or we're holding stuff in, man, it connects. It's that face-to-face. I encourage guys all the time, don't have passwords that your wife doesn't know. Don't try to hide things from her. Just be an open book as much as possible. Give her attention. When she's trying to engage you in conversation, maybe it's hard for you. Maybe you're like, I'm checked out, I'm tired, I don't want to have a talk. Right? Just let me give you a little pro tip. It doesn't take a lot. You can just say, here's how I'm feeling right now. I'm tired, I'm drained, right? Or here's what's on my mind. And then just open up about a few things. But anytime that we can communicate openly with our spouse, man, it does something to them and it helps them feel loved. And then just a fourth example of how to show love is compliment her. We all need compliments. But for women, this is an especially big deal, right? She needs to know and she needs to understand and she needs to believe that she is your standard. So when you say you're beautiful, she knows she is your standard of beauty. When you say, man, I appreciate some of the things you've taken up on the house and some of the chores you've done around here, you didn't have to do that. You're saying you're my standard of how a house should be kept, right? When you compliment her parenting, you're saying you're my standard of a parent. I so appreciate what you're doing. King Solomon of Israel, he writes a poem and he gives us an example of this. He writes about a young man who's complimenting his lover with these words. Oh, how beautiful you are. How pleasing, my love. How full of delights. It's this young man looking at his lover saying, I treasure you. I appreciate you. He's speaking life-giving words to her. Now, to be fair, the next verse reveals he might have had a little bit of hidden motives because he goes on to write this. You are slender like a palm tree and your breasts are like its clusters of fruit. Fruit that I love and enjoy and want to eat, right? But he started off pretty good. We'll give him credit for that. Now, for years, I actually had a reminder on my phone. And when I got in the habit, I took it off, and it probably wouldn't hurt me to put it back on. but a reminder on my phone that went off every time I pulled up in my driveway. It's just a nice little phone that a feature that iPhones have that you can do this. But it literally would say, Rindy is my princess, and I need to treat her like that. And it's because I had gotten in the habit of every day when I'd come home, there'd be just stress I was carrying. And so either I wouldn't say anything, or I'd completely unload and completely just say ridiculous things that hurt her. Now, don't misunderstand. Both men and women need to feel loved, no doubt about it. But what we're talking about here is a primary need. On the flip side, the primary need for most men is to feel respected. The primary need for most men is to feel respect. Now, before the ghost of Susan B. Anthony or Elizabeth Cady Stanton or any of the other great women who fought for equal rights start to haunt me right now, right, start to choke me out, I want to be clear that to say a man needs to feel respected and honored at some level does not mean he is superior. Nor does it mean at any level you should just bow down and say, I just submit to you, oh my king. Right, the Apostle Paul in one of his letters writes about submitting, but here's what he writes. He says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. There is something in the makeup of human beings where we need respect. And we, at times, in showing respect, need to submit to one another. We give up our needs and preferences for the benefit of the relationship, okay? That all being said, for men, this is a primary need. Men care a lot about honor and respect. Right now, I'm reading a book called The Better Angels of Our Nature. And I don't recommend it to you because it's more than 800 pages, so like halfway through, you'll hate me. But here's the deal. It's a fascinating book, and it's a book that talks about how in the time period of history we live, we actually surprisingly get along as human beings much more than any other time in history. And so the author, Steven Pinker, talks about in this book about historically how men have always been obsessed with honor. And he says the desire for honor and respect has led very noble individuals to kill each other in duels. He said this desire for honor and respect is what caused this outbreak between the Hatfields and the McCoys in the late 1800s in the Appalachians. There have been actually fathers who've killed their own children, husbands who've killed their wives because they felt dishonored, and they call it the honor killing. Right? Ridiculous stuff because of this desire for honor. And I think this is why, even though the movie Braveheart came out more than 20 years ago, it still resonates with most men. Right? Many of you will remember the movie. Mel Gibson is playing William Wallace, this true real-life hero who helped lead the Scottish people into independence. And there's a scene in the movie where William Wallace is trying to fire up some of the countrymen, and he's trying to get them to stand up for themselves and for freedom. And initially, he's getting some pushback. Some guys are saying, man, we don't want to risk our lives. We don't want to put ourselves in danger. And William Wallace confronts that idea, and he challenges them in a powerful speech. If you've never seen the movie, let's take a few seconds here to watch a little bit of that scene.
What will you do without freedom? Will you fight? Fight against that? No! We will run, and we will live. Aye. Fight and you may die. Run, and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Now, most men I know would love the chance to jump into Bill and Ted's time machine and paint our face blue and go back to that moment and be able to yell with intensity, they can take our lives, but they will never take our freedom. It's just who we are as men. This is why the military, the appeal that they make mostly to young men is about honor and respect. Right? The big appeal the military makes when they're trying to recruit isn't, hey, if you join the Marines, if you join the Army, your mama's gonna write you a Hallmark card every week and send you special X's and O's. Right? Their big appeal isn't, if you join the military, we're gonna sit around and share our feelings and you're gonna get to know everybody in a very close and intimate way. No, they appeal to honor. Generally speaking, most men wanna be honored and respected. Now, that doesn't minimize the need for women to be honored and respected. You might remember in the 1960s, even if you didn't live in the 60s, that Aretha Franklin actually had that hit record, right? The single she released, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. And it clearly sent this message that women have a desire and need to be respected. But what's interesting is Aretha Franklin didn't write that song. It was actually written a couple years earlier by Otis Redding. And do you want to know who he wrote it to? His wife. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. He's saying, I need it. Now, ladies, some of you get this and you say, man, I know my husband enough to appreciate his need for respect. But I realize there's some women here who you say, that may be true, but I'm going to tell you, there's not a chance that's coming from me. He hasn't earned it. He doesn't deserve it at any level, and you're actually maybe even cringing. And it may be very true that he hasn't earned it and he doesn't deserve it. But we wouldn't have a whole lot of problem giving pushback on this idea of unconditional love. We need to learn to embrace a little bit of what it means to have unconditional respect. Because respect doesn't have to be a feeling. Respect can be a choice. I hope that if you don't like your boss, you still respect him or her. I hope that if you have someone in authority or in your life, which we all do, that you respect them. I would hope that any politician in any part of our country could walk into this place, a senator, a congressman, right? Any world leader could walk into our building, and my hope and prayer would be, regardless of what we think about their beliefs and their actions, that we would show respect. You can show respect without feeling respect. And if you think I'm exaggerating about this need that your guy has for respect, just ask him. Who knows? Maybe he'll say, no, not for me. But my guess is most men resonate and say, yeah, that is important. Both men and women need it, but for men, it's a primary need. So very quickly, I'm going to give you 4 ways to do that. All right? Number 1, fuel his independence. How do you show respect to him? Just fuel his independence. Well, what does that mean? It means if your husband wants to walk outside in shorts and a t-shirt and it's 20 below zero, don't be his mom. Let him do it. Don't go chasing after him. You need a hat. You're going to get a cold. Get your jacket on right now. Can I help you find your gloves? No, if he wants to go outside wearing almost nothing, let him do it. Do not emasculate him by taking away his independence. Another way that it's easy to emasculate a guy is if somebody asks your husband a question, let him answer. Right? Don't feel like you got to interrupt him. Well, 17 years ago, here's what happened. No, honey, it was 16 years ago. Because remember we were in college and it was 16 years ago, not 7. Don't interrupt him. Right now we're in group season at Great Lakes Church, which means it's time to sign up for groups. And my hope is that all of us sign up for groups. But if your husband doesn't want to sign up for a group, your partner doesn't want to sign up for a group, don't sign them up. I saw a guy just a couple months ago, and I saw that he had signed up for the first time to volunteer. He'd been around for a while, so I saw him in the hallway, and I high-fived him. I said, dude, way to go, man. I said, I'm excited to see that you signed up to volunteer. He goes, I didn't sign up. My wife signed me up. I'm like, are you kidding me? Come on, man. Guys, you want to honor him and respect him, fuel his independence. Maybe your guy likes to build and accomplish and achieve things. Don't keep telling him why he can't do that. Let him dream. Right, prior to my wife and I starting Great Lakes Church, I moved around a lot. I'm an entrepreneur. I like to build things. So I literally, since we had been married, been on staff at 6 different churches. We lived in 11 different homes or apartments. And every single time that I would go to my wife to say, hey, I sense that it's time for us to move. I'm ready for the next challenge. She would fuel it. Now, based on where you're at in life, maybe you say, hey, I'm going to give some pushback, and here's what I'm thinking. But, man, let him dream. Number 2, you want to show respect? Support his efforts. He knows you like Oreos, so he comes home one day and he surprises you with Oreos. Don't berate him because he didn't get double-stuffed Oreos. You know I like double-stuffed, right? If he's trying to do something around the kitchen, he's trying to put things in the dishwasher, don't berate him because he doesn't do it right. Why would you put glasses in that way? That's not how we do it, right? Now later, when it's a completely different atmosphere, you might say, hey, I appreciate when you do things like that. Can I just give you a thought? Can I give you a suggestion of how to do it? Right? If he's trying to help with the kids, and maybe he's disciplining, but he's going excessive one way or the other, maybe the best thing you could do is just not interrupt right then. Just respect his efforts. And then on a side note, you can say, hey, I think you're being too tough on our kids. But don't belittle him right there in front of the kids. A third way to show respect would be honor the commitments you've made. If you've made commitments financially and say, hey, we're not going to spend extra in this season, or here's what we're going to do for the holidays, do your best to just honor the commitments. Oh, but Amazon Prime is having their sale, and I totally forgot. This is like the one-day sale. I need it. No, just honor the commitments you made. It shows respect. And then number 4, you want to show respect to your man. Find ways to build him up. How you talk about your man to him is a big deal. And how you talk about him to your friends is even a bigger deal. It can build his confidence or completely destroy his confidence. That's why King Solomon writes this. He says, the tongue can bring death or life. Maybe you just need to say to him every so often, I respect you. I think you're doing a great job as a dad. I think you're doing a great job in the energy you bring to our family. For Valentine's Day this year, there was a guy named Duncan Robb from England who decided he was going to surprise his girlfriend with tickets to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. There was a concert taking place in Ireland, so this was going to take a couple of days. He was going to make a trip out of it. Well, a couple days before they left for their trip, Rob discovered that he accidentally bought tickets to the Red Hot Chili Pipers. Okay? Made an honest mistake, felt stupid about it. And apparently, the Red Hot Chili Pipers bill themselves as the world's best bagpipe band. So he didn't know what he was going to say to her, and so he comes out and he says, hey, here's what I accidentally did. And instead of mocking him on social media, they laughed at it, and they went and they had a great time and made the most of it. For most women, feeling loved is how they're going to get off the crazy cycle. For most men, feeling respected is how they're going to get off the crazy cycle. This is why the Apostle Paul, after writing commentary about marriage, decides to summarize his thoughts with these words. He says, so again, I say, each man must love his wife as he loves himself. There's a lot of power in those words. And the wife must respect her husband. You want to get off the crazy cycle? Recognize the triggers. If you struggle with alcohol, a trigger would be, I'm not going to that party because I know there's going to be a lot of alcohol and a lot of pressure to drink. If you struggle with anxiety, maybe a trigger would be, I'm not going to that party because there's so many people packed into a really small house and I'm just going to feel out of place. For the crazy cycle, the 2 triggers are these. For women, it's feeling unloved. For men, it's feeling disrespected. I love what Dr. Larry Crabb writes in one of his books on marriage. He says this, often the failure of men and women to meet each other's emotional needs is simply due to ignorance of each other's needs. Most of the time when we don't meet each other's needs, it's not intentional. It's not like we're trying to hurt each other. We're just ignorant. Guys, it's possible to have a great marriage, but you have to create the environment for it. As we wrap this up, I want to ask you a question. What is the difference between these 1953 Studebakers? Well, it's obvious. They've been in different environments. One has been left outside. It's been left to rust. Nobody's spent time and attention with it. The other, somebody's obviously put some time and attention in it. Right? For over 60 years, it's been kept in somewhat decent condition. Environment matters. Right? Some of these reality TV shows on relationship, you're like, man, look at the love, look at the emotions that are flying. Well, it's because producers spend a whole lot of money and time creating an environment for those emotions to be produced. Truth is, I could fall in love with my sister in most of those environments. You want a healthy marriage? Create an environment of love and respect. You'll get off the crazy cycle. And if you say, hey, I want to get off the crazy cycle, but here's the deal, my husband won't show me love. Don't wait for him to show you love before you start showing him respect. Well, I want to get off but the crazy cycle, but my wife will not show me respect. Don't wait for her to show you respect before you start showing her love. Now, we're out of time. Okay, next week, we're going to continue our series. We're going to talk about great sex. Okay, you can bring your kids. They're going to learn a lot. My suggestion would be you probably don't want to bring your kids, but hey, you can. That's your choice, right? Just know I am the Dr. Ruth of Great Lakes Church in Southeast Wisconsin. That's just how it's been. Self-proclaimed, right? As a quick reminder, every Sunday evening at 8:30 p.m., we have Facebook Live, where Tony and Michelle Peterson really recap the week in something we call Relationship Restart After Hours. They recap what we talked about. They add their own stories. They do some giveaways, lots of fun. I've been engaged in the last couple of weeks and will do so again this Sunday. I'll close with this thought. In order for our relationships to be healthy and to go the distance, most of us need other people speaking into our relationship. And at Great Lakes Church, we have what we call marriage mentors. These are individuals. Some of them have had great marriages all along. You know, they've gone through struggles, but it's been a strong marriage. Others have experienced infidelity. Some have gone through divorce. And they're taking what they've gone through, the ups and downs, and saying, hey, we want to share with others and help others. A marriage mentor is someone that you just meet on your schedule, maybe once a month, once every other month, and you just say, well, get together, and we'll just kind of share what we're going through. My wife and I have marriage mentors. And it's not always easy to open up. We've shared some things that quite honestly are embarrassing. In fact, for some, it's like embarrassing for me to talk on some of our services because well, they know what we've been going through. They know what we've experienced. But man, it's been so healthy. And in the lobby today, you'll see people with marriage mentor shirts on, and you can connect with them. And you can ask them about it, or you can use your connection card to put marriage mentors on, and someone will get back to you with some information on what that looks like. I want to close today by taking just a couple moments to show you what Marriage Mentor is in a video, and then I will pray and we'll be done. Check this out.
We've been through some things that we know that people could benefit from. And
you know, I grew up in a home which ended in divorce in high school, so I didn't really get a lot of help.
Getting through marriage is a team effort. It's not just the wife and the husband getting through it.
We both come from divorced families. My parents are divorced, my wife's parents are divorced. All our brothers and sisters are divorced.
We both made a commitment to each other to make sure that we prepare because we did not want to go through the same hardships that we went through.
I never took a course on how to love one woman for the rest of your life.
Just someone to kind of bring that third-party perspective in when their emotions aren't involved.
We're just ordinary, couples that have, we've experienced a lot of different things in marriages, different struggles, and again, we've come out stronger.
I think the most important thing about marriage mentoring is it takes some of the guesswork out of marriage.
Because we want to help people stay out of divorce court and live happy lives with God in the center.
From the beginning, mentoring with somebody, that's the way to go.
What our focus is really to help you look ahead in the future on a path that we've already walked.
Share what we've learned along the way.
In a non-judgmental way. We're not gonna judge for what people are going through. We're just there to love and support.
that's where I think that we've come out of this and we put God in control of our marriage, and it's really helped us to put together a great game plan.
Yeah, and it really helps people see marriage, the blessing that marriage can be.
You're going to have different seasons in your marriage, and no matter what season you're in right now, that season can change, and there's hope.
The general consensus is the same, that when you're at your end, you can make it, and there's hope.
So Marriage Mentors isn't for just, oh, we're in crisis. In fact, if you're in a big crisis, you probably want to see a professional marriage therapist. This is for people who say, hey, marriage we're starting to drift, or we want to go from good to great. And so I encourage you to seek this out and to learn a little bit more about it and to make your marriage a priority. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, Give us the wisdom on how to best show the women in our life love and the men in our life respect. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.